listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11, Monday through Friday.
We will be fair to all involved in this important debate, and we will work together to pass legislation that strikes the right balance and puts hard-working Georgians first. But also want to be very clear. There's always room for compromise, but there will be no room for excuses, half measures, or failure. Whether it is this legislative session or perhaps a second one later this year, we will achieve meaningful, impactful tort reform.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and that was Governor Brian Kemp in the State of the State. And since then, his tort reform bill has been dropped, and he's joining us right now. Governor Kemp, how are you?
Hey, good morning, Martha. Beautiful day in Northeast Georgia.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of a fake spring right now. But
That's right.
That's right. So anyway, listen, and I don't know about you, but when it's cold like it was and then it gets a little bit warmer and cold again, it feels colder to me, but that's just me. Anyway.
Yeah, I know. It is. They're teasing us right now.
That's right. That's what we love about Georgia. Let's talk about tort reform first. This bill, you were very clear in the State of the State that this is the bill that you want, that if it takes this session or a special session, just give us a little overview of that.
Well, I think, the remarks that you played in the opening really hit home as to what we're doing, why we're doing it, and that failure in the status quo is not an option. We have got to get something done. We are doing a very comprehensive bill, but it's also reasonable. And it's really, to me, Martha, it's about our business environment. We've been the number one state in the country for business for 11 years in a row. We've been on an incredible run economically. But we have other states now that are using our legal environment against us. It's also, literally I hear from people every week about insurance cost, frivolous lawsuits, how frustrating this is for them, people that can't even, put their business name on their trucks anymore. And that's just not the kind of environment that we need. We need to be on parity with other states around us and other states like Texas and Florida that we compete with every day in the marketplace for good paying jobs and new opportunities in our state. And that's simply what we are doing.
Well, I'm excited about it. I mean, I think it's been a long time coming. And, anytime you kind of marry, if you will, that tort reform with regulation reform and that kind of thing, because we should always be looking at regulations and making sure that we're making it easier for Georgians to do business and to live every day, not harder.
Yeah, but, on the flip side of that, too, we're also, we're protecting the rights of all Georgians to have access to our civil justice system and ensure that those that have been wrong receive justice and are made whole. But it's also about just making sure that we have transparency in the process where we empower the jury to make good decisions. The problem is a lot of the rules and laws that are in place now, the juries are not getting but some of the information, and it makes it one-sided, that really hurts our small businesses and our business owners in our state. And that's really what we're trying to rectify here. We're not trying to move the needle way to the other side of this equation. We're simply trying to get some parity to be more like states that we're competing with every day that I mentioned earlier, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Texas, and others.
So it's funny, we had a lawyer talking about this that said that they were going to get in trouble with the Trial Lawyers Association because they thought it was a pretty good bill, and that, that we have to work hard because what they deal with in the real world in the courtroom is what they're calling jackpot juries, where I don't know why. I don't know if I like to blame everything on social media, but I don't think it's all social media. But there's this idea that it should be like a lottery winning instead of actual real damages for what happened.
Well, I think that's definitely part of it, and just making sure that we have a system that's fair to all sides that are involved in these cases. And that's, to me right now, it's one-sided. and that's not the way it should be. It shouldn't be, as a small business owner for 35 years, Martha, I don't want it to be one-sided toward me. I just want it to be fair. If you have to get in those situations that, you have a process that is reasonable and fair to all parties involved. And right now, it's just one-sided when you think about premises liability, phantom damages, the whole issue of seat belts and not even being able to tell the jury whether somebody was wearing their seat belt or not when they have an automobile accident that could affect the amount of damage that individual receives and, what they may end up receiving because of some, civil claim or legal claim that the jury doesn't even know whether this person had their seatbelt on or not. So we're just trying to do things really, and I think our team did a good job with the bill. We talked to all sides of the issue, but we tried to do something that it is, as I said, comprehensive, but it's also fair. But the other thing is, I think it just passes the common sense test. I mean, we could have gone a lot harder, but that's not. It would have been harder to get something that would be successful. We just want to stabilize the market. I've had a lot of people going, well, you're not going to bring insurance costs down. And I haven't been saying bringing costs down, but we cannot continue to live with 20 to 30% increases on liability insurance and other things. I mean, we've got to stabilize the marketplace out there. And then the other thing is we have people that are just companies that are leaving the industry altogether. And we have businesses out there that can't get anybody to write an insurance policy for them. And if you can't get insurance, you can't run your business. And that's, I've told people on the other side of this issue, that's not a good environment for their business either. If we have businesses that are going out of business, if we are not going to be the number one state in the country for business anymore, if we start losing deals to other states around us, that's not good for our business environment. It's not good for our people. And that's why we're doing this.
So last fall, of course, we had the horrible impact of Hurricane Helene, and, of course, we're still feeling it today. Can you give us an update of where we are on that?
Yeah, so we're still really engaged. I wrote a letter to President Trump the other day about extending the 100% payment for debris removal. Hopefully we're going to hear something on that today. It is just we've never seen a storm this big where we've had to deal with so much debris, and it's taken so long to do that. So a lot of our local governments are still moving debris every single day and trying to, reduce those costs to them. So we're advocating for that with the president and certainly Director Stallings, who just left to go to SBA at the disaster relief position there, had advocated that before. And so, we're hopeful that gets done. We've got a $614 million package in my proposed budget to the legislature for hurricane relief, money for debris cleanup, road repair, signage replacement, just all these little things that you never really think about. We got to replace the money that we saved on the gas tax suspension so we can continue to keep our transportation projects funded. We're having to plus up the state's property insurance risk pool, and then we're putting $150 million into the governor's emergency fund so that we can meet the FEMA's the match on for FEMA for the federal match on disaster relief. So we're working with the General Assembly right now on other things that we may can do, and then working on also being prepared that when the federal money starts flowing, that we're set up and ready to roll. We could turn that money very quickly back to our farmers and timber producers and our local governments and other people that are going to be eligible for that assistance, because as you know, this storm was extremely hard hitting. We had a great response to it, which is what we need to do, but it also, there hasn't been as much of a media presence on what happened in Georgia because of that. And so it's up to us to make sure we continue to beat the drum for our farmers and timber producers and our people in rural parts of our state, and really everybody that was affected by the storm.
Well, I mean, you see this kind of bias towards coverage in a lot of rural areas, whether it's rural North Carolina, rural Georgia. I mean, heck, East Palestine, it's like seems like the media is there and gone, and that if we don't keep shining a light on it, then people forget that these folks are still suffering. When things happen, like in big places like Los Angeles, then even then it's hard to keep the spotlight on it. So I'm really happy with the work you're doing to keep that on. We've been talking to Tyler Harper too, a number of times just to kind of talk about, what the ag department's doing.
Well, we're going to continue to beat that drum, and I can assure you that, our citizens don't need to worry about us being focused on this issue. I mentioned in the State of the State that this will have our highest priority is making sure that we're taking care of our storm victims and continue to do what we can at the state level and also working with President Trump, the members of Congress. I'm very appreciative of them passing the package as quickly as they did. And, I mentioned that as well during the State of the State address. And we're just going to stay after. We still have a lot left to do. It's going to be a long recovery, but we're going to recover. We have resilient people in this state, and, people aren't asking for a handout. They just want to have a hand up, and we're going to be there to help do that.
Now, I know you stepped up the income tax reduction. You mentioned that in the State of the State, and there's a plan in place to get to zero income tax. Do you see that light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I don't know what plan you're talking about going to zero state income tax, but my priority has been to continue to cut taxes in Georgia. We have done that. We've either returned or cut taxes to save hardworking Georgians over $7.6 billion. So this year, we're going to return another $1 billion of taxpayers' money back to them. So people will actually be getting if they paid taxes last year, they'll be getting a rebate up to $250 for an individual, $500 if you're a family that's a family filer, just to help people fight through this high cost environment that we're in that was created by the Biden administration, and help our people fight through, really tough economic times in a lot of places. Even though our state's doing really good, costs are up all across the board, and we're trying to help people deal with that. We're also going to accelerate the plan that we have to move the tax rate in Georgia to 4.99% from 5.75%, where we started a couple of years ago. As you know, we accelerated the tax cut last year. We're going to do 20 basis points again this year. That will save another $7.5 billion over the next 10 years to hardworking Georgians. And this is cutting the personal income tax and the business tax. So it'll continue to make us very competitive from a business perspective. And my goal in my last 2 years as governor is to continue to keep lowering that rate and see how low we can get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I knew there wasn't a bill for it, but I know that, that's the goal of a lot of legislators, I know, to get that to zero and to be competitive with the states around us. I know that that's a hard process, though.
Well, the thing is, Martha, it's an easy talking point. It's hard from a policy perspective because, Georgians, when they go to the grocery store, they're not paying sales tax on groceries. Our farmers and agribusiness producers, if they buy a tractor, they're not paying sales tax on that. It makes them more competitive. Our big manufacturers aren't paying sales tax on energy. But it helps us bring, like the Hyundai plant, the SK battery plant, and all these big manufacturing plants that create incredible jobs with good benefits and opportunities. So, there's other taxes that Georgians aren't paying when they are paying the state income tax. So it's all relative. I mean, we have
I agree.
One of the lowest tax environments in the Southeast. And it's like when you go to Florida, you're going to pay a higher sales tax. If you go buy a brand new, TV, you're going to pay more sales tax in Florida than you pay in Georgia. So they're going to get you one way or another.
Absolutely. Now, one final question, because I know we've only got about a minute more with you. One of my favorite moments with you is when I sat down with you a long time ago and you were signing paychecks. You know what I mean? You were a working guy. You were signing paychecks. Does that come into play as you're making the decision about what you're going to do next? That you were a small business guy, you are a small business guy. Is that tugging at you, or when are you going to make that decision?
Well, I'm still a small business guy. I'm still, paying bills and dealing with insurance costs like everybody else is, rising property taxes, just all those things that I've done for a long time, which is good. It keeps me grounded. But I tell people, Martha, my focus right now is on my day job. I got two responsibilities outside my family and my business, and that is, number one is I'm the governor of the great state of Georgia, and we made a commitment during this last campaign cycle when I was helping House candidates, helping President Trump win Georgia and a lot of other good people on the ballot, that we would deliver on the things that we were promising. And that's what I'm focused on doing the next 2.5 months during the legislative session. And then I'm also the chair in the Republican Governors Association, and I'm committed to helping raise a lot of money and elect good Republicans all over this country. Because when you really look where the rubber meets the road, it's with the governors. And you look at the Republican governor, especially coming out of the pandemic, the states that had Republican governors have thrived. And states like, take, for instance, Maryland right now. There's a big article about they're raising taxes and have a budget deficit. The great state of Georgia, we're cutting taxes, and we have budget surplus. And so it's important we continue to elect leaders like that. They helped me, and now I'm going to help them.
Well, Governor Brian Kemp, you've done a fantastic job as governor, and I know you always focus on the job, but I did love watching you sign paychecks, so it was great. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you very much.
Y'all have a good day. God bless.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
We're so glad to welcome into the studio Mayor Sam Couvillon, who we've talked to a bunch of times. You guys know him, but he's in a different role today. He is running for the 9th District Congressional Republican primary. Sam Couvillon, welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me. I do feel comfortable in this seat. It's the first time as a candidate and not as officially as the mayor. A little uneasy, but I feel like I'm in the right spot. I'm looking forward to the run ahead, and I feel like I've got a lot to offer to the people of the 9th District.
And you're going to join me again on February the 18th, where we're going to be remembering Pastor Rod Huey on his birthday and celebrating raising a little money for his daughter's college fund. So we're excited about that.
I'm glad you brought that up. Rod was such a special person to the community. He was a close friend of mine. He did so much for our law enforcement as he was one of their pastors, and just a very untimely death, and has a small child that is going to need some help with educational expenses going down the road. And I know Chief Parrish and Sheriff Couch have agreed to help raise money. So everyone listening out there, next week we will be having a bit of a phone-a-thon. We're going to try to raise some money to help take care of Rod's daughter. So that I'm looking forward to that. Yeah,
thank you so much for being so willing to help with that. So for people that may not know you, just tell them a little bit about you and then why you're running for Congress.
Yeah, the Reader's Digest version on Sam Couvillon. I was born and raised in Watkinsville. My father was an educator. My mother was a self-employed court reporter. Valedictorian of her class. I love to tell the story. She was valedictorian of her class, but she didn't go to college because somebody had to work while my dad was in college. And went to the University of Georgia, met my wife there. And we moved back to Gainesville after 15 years in Jacksonville. We moved back to Gainesville in 2009. This is her hometown. She is a Gainesville Red Elephant. And we have two kids, 25 lives in Charlotte, school teacher, and 23 lives in Raleigh, and she just graduated and she's in her first job. So, great
is
family.
She in the pharmacy business?
She's in the job placement business.
Oh, okay,
so headhunters, and that's the family. And then, how I got here, from the political side of things, I never, really thought I was going to be in politics, but I was going to run for school board. And a good friend of mine who's a county commissioner, Jeff Stowe, came to me and he said, "Hey, look, Danny Dunnigan's running for mayor. That opens up a city council spot." At the time, our council was older, 86 years old, 81 years old, 74, 71, 64. And so Jeff encouraged me to run. And so I ran for city council in 2013. I did 2 terms on the council, and I went to Danny, and I said, "Danny, I'm going to run." Danny had said he wasn't going to run again. And so he had said previously he wasn't going to. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to run. And then Danny ended up running for the city council spot, so we just swapped chairs. And, this council, we have seen, transformational changes, just churning that economic engine for all these business owners, bringing Boot Barn Hall. We welcomed at their 1-year anniversary. They asked me to speak, and I was just basically saying happy birthday, and we had people from 27 counties purchase tickets, and that is exactly what our intent was when we brought Boot Barn Hall here, was to bring people from outside the county to come into our county and eat at Avocados, to eat at Recess, to eat at Scott's, to get those outside tax dollars, bring them in here and help Gainesville's business churn. And we feel like we've had a very big hand in that progress.
So what made you decide to run for Congress?
I mean, ultimately, I feel like, we in the 9th District, we need a better representative for the 9th District. When I wake up in the morning, I want somebody who's going to be respected by his peers in Washington. I want somebody who's going to go to work for the people in the 9th District. I want somebody who's going to look at, Trump was overwhelmingly elected here in November. I want somebody who's going to walk shoulder to shoulder with the president and try to get his agenda passed. And I mean, ultimately, we need a voice in Congress who's going to help the people in the 9th District.
So what are your key issues? What are the things you think about when you think about the 9th District?
I mean, I think it's probably the same that a lot of people think. I mean, what are we worried about? We're worried about the cost of goods. We're worried about inflation. We're worried about a secure border. I'm worried about our farmers. I mean, here recently our representative voted against farm aid. We had a bad natural disaster. Hurricane Helene hit our state, and our representative voted against hurricane relief. I mean, God help us if we're the ones that are hit next year. Are we going to have that support of our delegation to help us if we are the ones that are hit by the natural disaster? Those are the things, we've got to take care of our people, and we've got to have a congressman who is going to do that. For me, it's not about being on Fox News. It's not about making a point. It's about going to work and doing the job that you were elected to do. I've shown as mayor, the buck stops with me. I make tough decisions. I talk to people who like me. I talk to people who don't like me, and I'm never afraid to have that conversation. But the buck stops with me. I don't have the luxury of passing or sitting still and not answering the call. I've got to make the decisions, make the tough decisions, and ultimately help Gainesville move forward. And I feel like I can do that for the 9th District as well.
No, that was the next question. So you've had a lot of success here in Gainesville. I think nobody can deny. Now, people that don't like the traffic maybe don't think it. That's probably the people that don't like you, right? But how do you translate what you've done here to a congressional seat?
I think it's all about being able to work with people. It's about having a common sense approach when you when you attack a difficult issue. It's about being able to work with people to get through those difficult issues. You mentioned traffic. I mean, there's not a day that I wake up that I don't think about how we can improve the traffic in Gainesville. A lot of times it's little gains. They're not big transformational gains. We're not going to have a bypass overnight here in Gainesville, but we are working on things to try to help the traffic. I would do the same thing, when tackling inflation. I mean, I'm going to work with the administration to try to figure out what can we do to move that ball. Inflation's not going to, you're not going to bend that curve in 2 days. You're not going to do it in 2 weeks. But by having a common sense approach and working with people, working in Congress, having the respect of your peers, you're going to be able to get things done a lot more effectively than being a man on an island.
Well, the challenge with inflation, I think, is that for prices to actually go down, there has to be something pretty dramatic to happen. The bigger problem I think we've had that's riding along with inflation is the fact that incomes are so flat. I mean, that for example, in the state of Georgia, we've increased teachers' salaries by about $9,500 over the last 4 years, but that's roughly on average about a 23% increase. Well, inflation went up 23%, so they may have gotten what looks like on paper a pretty good raise, but if inflation is the same amount, you're just treading water. So there's a hand-in-hand kind of component to that.
I mean, I think, it's time to move on, but the past 4 years of the Biden administration, the uncontrollable spending, that is what gave us the inflation. So even when we were tacking upwards with our incomes, the inflation outpaced that. So like you say, we're in a negative net position there. So one of the things that I think, and the president has talked about this, to get inflation in order, we've got to get energy cost in order. If we can get energy cost in order, that affects everything from, the price of homes, the price of automobiles, the price of groceries, everything. And, that is going to be something I'm going to be very mindful about.
So you've been doing this about 2 weeks, and I'm sure you've made some appearances in places and given a few speeches. What's been the thing that surprised you the most as you've talked to people? And then what have you learned as you've gone through this last couple of weeks?
I do want to say this is my first appearance with Martha. I have not spoken to people. We wanted to come on your show and do that. The reception has been great. I mean, I cannot tell you how humbling it is when you reach out to people and they are just saying, we've got your back. We want you to succeed. We're going to support you. I don't want to say that it's 100%. I've had a couple people that have texted me saying, why are you doing this? But, I mean, it has been humbling to have the support that we have here locally that have, walked with me as I'm mayor, and now they're ready to help me take that next step to be the next congressman from the 9th District.
So what does the district look like now? Because I know we've gone back and forth a little bit on this. We got 40% of Gwinnett County in there, which is a big difference. Jackson County's back, but what does it look like now?
Yeah, so you're going to test me here. So we've got a little bit of Gwinnett County on the northern side of Gwinnett County. We've got Hall County, which we don't have all of Hall. We've lost about 20%, just basically the western side of that. Jackson County, we go to Banks County, Habersham County, White County, Rabun County, Stevens County, Union County, Towns County, Fannin County, Gilmer County. I think that is it.
So Paulding's not in there anymore, and Dawson's not in there anymore.
No, back. We were talking when you ran. You had 20 counties.
Yeah.
You talked to Nathan Deal. I think when he ran initially, his territory touched the state of Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina, because he had the 9th District went across the whole northern part of the state. But I'm so excited about getting out, meeting people in the district. That's one reason why I was trying to be strategic about announcing now. I wanted to give people the ample opportunity to get to know who Sam Couvillon is. Let them know that that I'm going to work hard for them. Let them get to know me personally. Just see that I'm the right person for the job.
So what kind of work you do? People may not know that.
Yes, I'm in the insurance business. I'm a partner at Norton Insurance. I've been in the insurance business 20 plus years, and it's a great business to be in. You feel like you're helping people, and it kind of ties in well with what I try to do politically, which is help people.
So one final question, and then I'll let you tell people how they can get in touch with you. So we've had like drinking from a fire hose the last 2 weeks since the president's been in office. What are your thoughts about the first few weeks of the Trump administration, and then how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm not tired of winning. I feel like, President Trump has, it seems like every time he does something, it's a win. I was listening to your prior segment, just looking at the wasteful spending that we have going on that is being uncovered it's disheartening to think that all this time, our government will not do things differently just because it's they don't want to change. President Trump is coming at it at a different angle, and people didn't like Pete Hegseth. My feeling about Pete Hegseth was, we keep putting the retired generals in charge of the Department of Defense. Let's try something different. And you look at the recruitment the past 2 months. Highest recruitment for the Army the past 2 months that we've ever had. So we're moving in the right direction there. The other thing that I just was listening about that I'm very passionate about was the no boys and girls sports. I have 2 girls. There's times where women are like Riley Gaines. She goes to the NCAA swim meet, and not only does she have to change in the same locker room with a biological male, but then she has to swim against him. And then when she ties him, they defer to him and give him the medal instead of her. And, those days are over, and I look for more of those positive things to happen for our country moving forward, and I think we're headed in the right direction.
If people want to know more about you, how can they do it?
Yes, we have a website, sendsamtocongress.com. You can find everything you want to know about me there, and if there's a way to message me there, I'll be happy to reach out to you. If there's groups that want me to come talk to them, we're going to be doing that. It's a slow rollout. I mean, we only have 15, 16 months until the election. But again, the reason I wanted to get out ahead of everything was I wanted to be able to give people the right amount of time to get to know who I was. I didn't want it to be rushed. I've had friends tell me, don't try to cram it in there at the end. So we were just trying to be mindful of that.
Sam Couvillon, good luck. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
We're talking to Attorney General Chris Carr, and there's a lot going on in the Attorney General's office that we want to cover today. Chris, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Martha. So good to be with you on this beautiful North Georgia morning.
Absolutely. Listen, first of all, you had a big announcement yesterday related to what you're calling Operation Hold the Line. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Martha, we're excited about this. In 2017, we created the Georgia Anti-Gang Network. First time federal, state, and local law enforcement got in the room together to focus on gangs. This is really a more targeted operation that will focus on transnational gangs. And, Martha, as you know, we've seen, unfortunately, in our state, when you don't secure the border, we see human trafficking and we see gangs and we see fentanyl coming across the line, coming across the border, weapon smuggling and that type of thing. But what we want to do is to be able to bring the folks that are the boots on the ground in our state from federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies and focus on those transnational gangs. The announcement yesterday also from Attorney General Pam Bondi that the DOJ is shifting its focus to transnational gangs and cartels. This aligns perfectly, and we look forward to working with the Trump administration to get violent criminals out of our country.
Yeah, and how big of a problem is this? I mean, for people to understand, because I think sometimes it sounds like something that's happening somewhere else. How big of a problem is it for us?
No, it's a big issue. And again, Martha, it's the federal government's job to defend the nation, and immigration is part of that. And for the past 4 years, the Biden administration did everything it could to further the problem. But now we have a partner in solving the problem because we have seen evidence of Tren de Aragua and MS-13 and the Sureños. We have seen evidence of transnational gangs in the state of Georgia as it relates to drug trafficking. We have had some buyers and sellers in the human trafficking fight that we've had that have been folks that are here illegally, and 80% of all human trafficking is gang affiliated. And unfortunately, fentanyl it's rampant, Martha, and we know it's coming across the Mexican border, and we know the distribution network is oftentimes this gang network. In fact, Martha, we had a big bust over in Augusta not long ago where we seized 15 pounds of fentanyl.
Oh,
enough to kill 3.5 million people. Think about that. One operation in one city, in one state in the United States, enough to kill a third of the population of the state of Georgia. And we know, again, gangs and transnational gangs play a role in this. So we got to be able to focus on it on all three fronts.
So we've had several comments today before you came on, not related to your appearance, but related to immigration and the enforcing of the law and the changes. And I think what I'm hearing from folks, Chris, and I'm just kind of wondering if you're hearing about this too. What I'm hearing from folks is kind of a two-track. One, we're really glad that President Trump is enforcing the law. They're implementing deportation orders. They're going after violent criminals. Last number I saw is that they've tracked down about 30,000 of these 300,000 kids that they weren't quite sure where they were. But also a lot of people in places like North Georgia, they have friends and neighbors that may be illegal immigrants that are afraid, and they're not going places and they're not interacting. Are you hearing any of that? And is there a role for the Attorney General's office to play, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we are hearing that, but what I think, Martha, is the important point here is the administration has said they're focusing on violent criminals that have that criminal record. Martha, we sued the Biden administration. It is federal law in this country that if you are a violent criminal that's here illegally and you run through the criminal process and that's done, you're to be deported. The Biden administration just chose not to do that. And we sued them and we won, and then they, changed the rules and all that, and they pick and choose what they're going to do. But at the end of the day, we don't want violent criminals here. We don't want violent criminals in society anyway, which is why we focused on gang activity, and of course you got to crack down on that. But when you're looking at illegal immigration as well, that is part of what the law is going after violent criminals. I think that's the point, though, Martha. This is really about going after violent criminals that I think we all can agree nobody wants violent criminals in our community. And I've mentioned this before. Again, it is until the border is secure, you can't have that next conversation that needs to be had about how do you do. Agriculture is the number one industry in our state. Poultry is part of that. How do we develop a system where we need workers based on certain economic factors, but how do we bring workers for a short period of time so they can come and go, pair a willing employer and a willing employee? We've got some incredibly smart people at Georgia Tech in Georgia that we need that are from other countries. We need to be able to, again, based on economic factors, why are we not bringing them into the American dream? But nobody's going to have that conversation until people believe that the number one thing the federal government's supposed to do is keep us safe. And immigration is part of that. So as soon as we secure that border, you can have those other conversations as well.
Yeah, and it's absolutely true. And, I mean, look, in the 1950s, we had this thing, 40s and 50s, called the Bracero program, where we moved 400,000 ag workers back and forth across the border on an annual basis. And there were no computers in those days, Chris. It's like we can do it if we want to do it. We just have to want to do it and stop making it a political football. I know that you were very involved in holding accountable the district attorney in the Ahmaud Arbery case. And, I was disappointed to see what happened the other day. But I think that the statement that came out from the family's attorney, Ben Crump, shows really how you in the Attorney General's office, you work for everybody in Georgia. You don't take partisan positions, because Ben Crump named your office as being diligent in the work that they were doing. So can you update us on that case and what's happened?
Yeah, so we were disappointed in the outcome of that particular case, but I think what's important to remember is this. Because the state got involved, Governor's office, GBI, our office, 3 guys were charged with the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. 3 guys were convicted of violating his civil rights. We held the district attorney accountable. We got the story out about what happened. Didn't go our way on that particular day. But we also have changed legislation that's made it safe. And, Martha, what I said from the beginning, I have a legal job, and to hold people accountable where we think it's right. I stand by everything we've done. Because at the end of the day, the district attorneys that were involved in that case, one retired and one lost their race. So we did hold folks accountable. I said it from the beginning. Had that been my child, I would have prayed to God that everybody would have done everything they possibly could to help me and my family. And legally, that is what we did. And so, again, I think a lot came out of that, and accountability was met.
And I tell you, the people of Brunswick, they had prayer vigils every day. They didn't have violence. They had, I just think they're just wonderful people. And I love what your office did. You were in there from the beginning. You caused the right thing to be done. And I'm not going to ever criticize a judge. I mean, she's still going to be tried on something else. And so the biggest charge is still out there, even though I might be disappointed with the interim outcome.
Yeah. Martha, actually, no, they've dismissed both. I'm very disappointed in that.
Oh, both? I'm so sorry about that.
But just to be honest, to be factual, so that's we're disappointed in that. However, again, we did hold her accountable, and we made sure that, again, 3 people, most importantly, were convicted of Ahmaud Arbery's murder. A lot has happened since then. But I'll tell you what, the community in Brunswick and that really stood up and is a model for the nation at a time where there was a lot of violence and there was a lot of instead of peaceful protests, a lot of destruction that was going on. They're the model. And I tell everybody around the country, if you want to know how a community can come together, talk to my friends in Brunswick, Georgia.
Amen to that. I mean, and I was sorry I wasn't up to date on that final part of it.
No
worries. I know you guys did everything that you could, and even the attorney for Ahmaud Arbery's family said that you did. So I'm excited about that. So just one final question. How's everything going otherwise? I know you got a busy life right now.
We announced we're running for governor back in November, and Martha, we raised $2.2 million in the first 40 days, which nobody else has ever done, and we're so proud of that. It's just the beginning, though. We've got a long way to go. But, Georgia is the model for the nation, and how we've done it from bringing jobs and keeping people safe in this state. We just do it through the public and the private sector. We got to continue to do that. And there are a couple of, I think, elected officials that I've worked with or for that deserve a lot of credit. That's Johnny Isakson and Nathan Deal. And then what Governor Kemp has done has just been unbelievable, both from an economic development and a public safety standpoint. But, Governor Deal, I worked with him at economic development, and the number of jobs and investment we brought to the state is just is fantastic. But we got to continue to do that. We got to continue to do the things that kept us safe. We've been doing it, again, worked with Senator Isakson, been at economic development, and now as the Attorney General. So there's a lot to be proud of, but there's a lot left to do. We got to continue to focus on workforce and education and infrastructure and housing, but we also got to continue to keep people safe, because you're not going to come to this state if you don't feel safe. And that's why we focused on violent crime. That's why we're focusing on human trafficking, organized retail crime, to make sure that this remains the best state in the nation in which to live, work, and raise a family.
Chris Carr, we thank you so much for all the work that you do. I love the fact that you always take you take your job as Attorney General very seriously, and you have worked hard to protect the people of Georgia. We appreciate you very much. And if people want more information, how can they get it?
Yeah, they can go to our website of the Department of Law, and we've got a website on our campaign. Just look up Chris Carr, and we'll pop up on both of them.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.